Hello everybody, Trevor here, and I just watched the first few episodes of All Engines Go on YouTube. And do you know what I think of it? It's fucking awful! When I first saw this teaser poster for All Engines Go back in 2020, I knew this is going to be bad. I mean, what the hell was Mattel thinking? I had so much hope and faith in this company, but because of this new direction, I'm done defending them. If you thought Thomas Magic Railroad, The Hit Eras, Big World Big Adventures, or any of the videos on YouTube were all bad, then you haven't seen nothing yet. So right now, I'm going to do a top 10 reasons why I hate All Engines Go, and why I hate it more than any other reboot in existence. Now without wasting any more time, let's look at this piece of scrap metal that is All Engines Go. Number 1. The old characters are out of character. One of the biggest problems I have with the reboot is that not only that they made Thomas, Percy, Nia, and Diesel little kids, but they also made Gordon a father figure, as well as making Sir Topham Hatt a comedic foil. I know that Thomas and Percy are young engines, but come on! They're not supposed to be this young! The same thing goes for Diesel and Nia. Let's talk about Gordon for a minute. In the original show, he was always this big brotherly figure to Thomas and the other engines at Timma's sheds. Sure, he can be pompous, arrogant, and bossy at times, but there's a time and a place for him to be helpful to his friends. But here, they made him a fatherly figure. How does that make any fucking sense? Sir Topham Hatt is a fatherly figure. The dispatcher from Theodore Tugboat is a fatherly figure. And even Professor freaking Utonium from the Powerpuff Girls is a fatherly figure. Let's talk about one more. Diesel is now Thomas's best friend. When the fucking hell were they best friends? In the original show, Diesel was always this devious villain who has a prejudice against steamies. But here, they're friends now. Not to mention that he has a tall forehead now, which makes him look even more young. Oh, and sorry for bursting your bubble, Mattel, but bringing back old characters like Edward and Henry isn't making the reboot any better. I'll talk about the new characters later. Number 2, the redesigns. Another thing I hate about this reboot is that the redesigns are not only horrific, but also completely inconsistent. I mean, look at Thomas for example. His funnel is wrong, his whistles are wrong, his footplate is wrong, and there's no door that lets drivers and firemen go inside his cab. Not to mention that they completely changed his face to make him look more childlike. Oh, and did I forget to mention that there are no drivers and firemen in this show? Why am I not surprised? Now let's talk about Carly. Good God, what did they do to Carly? In the original show, Carly was a rolling gantry tower crane who came to Brendam Docks to help out Cranky and Big Mickey for the extra work. And I thought that was a good change because I don't want Cranky to be all alone at Brendam Docks by himself. Here, they made her a crane engine by giving her train wheels and using her big head as her torso. That's so out of proportion! Number 3, the animation, and the overuse of the bouncing. Let's first talk about the bouncing. At least in Big World Big Adventures and Journey Beyond Sodor, they have limitations to their bouncing. But here, it's way too cartoony! I don't mind if other shows get away with this kind of stunt, but it's Thomas the freaking Tank Engine! I mean, look at this mess. The engines can jump off the tracks, turn 360 degrees, and even squash and stretch. That does not fit the series at all. Now let's talk about the new 2D animation. It does not suit the series at all. I know there was a canceled pilot back in the 1970s that was meant to be a 2D animated musical, but I'm glad they dropped that because otherwise it'd be weird. Besides, models and CGI are the way to go. Speaking of CGI, why couldn't Mattel just resume this CGI series and continue where Big World Big Adventures left off? It's not like there's nothing left to work with. In fact, there are plenty of ideas to go with for the show. For example, you could adapt more stories from the Railway series if you wanted to. Or better yet, why not remake more classic stories into CGI like they did with The Avenger Begins? Now that is a reboot done right, not this 2D animated trash. Number 4, the new characters. They're not that interesting, except maybe Kana, Sandy, and Bruno. Kana doesn't get an official introduction until the very first 2D special called Race for the Sodor Cup, which I'm sure will be terrible. Sandy is just a kiddie version of Winston but works with Carly. And as for Bruno, at the time of making this video, we don't know what Bruno looks like. Hopefully he'll be an interesting character though. If I were to make my own Thomas stories with these new characters, which may not happen on my channel by the way, I would write Kana as a visiting agent from Japan and works on the Peel Godric branch line for a while. And Sandy can be the Misty Island equivalent of Winston where she gets teased by Bash and Dash due to her small size, and Ferdinand acts as a grandfatherly figure to her. You see, in my series, I always think of Ferdinand as the Misty Island equivalent of Edward. Number 5. The setting. Another huge issue I have with this new show is that the setting on Sodor feels unrealistic and inconsistent. Not only it has lush countrysides and sandy beaches, but also desert canyons and jungles. When did Sodor ever have any of those? Sodor is a British island, not a combination of other lands in the world. At least Thomas Majorero didn't have a desert climate on Sodor despite the fact that the talking tumbleweed didn't really add anything to it. Sure, it does have magical elements that go against the original source material's logic, but I'm fine with that because that movie makes connections to the American spin-off show Shine Time Station, which is another one of my favorite childhood shows. And at least the engines don't bounce off the tracks in that film, and that they still maintains their original designs. While it may not be a perfect family film, but it's far more watchable than this crap. But here, there's also a roller coaster loop track, tunnel of zoom, cave of crystals, and an obstacle course made by Thomas for some reason in one episode. At least Thomas Majorero didn't have any of those either. And that's another thing. According to the All Engines Go wiki, the island of Sodor is separate from the rest of the world and not off the coast of England. To quote the Angry Video Game Nerd, what were they thinking? Number 6. The new voice actors. There are a few that are kind of good like Gordon's, James's, and Cranky's, but most of the other new voices, especially for Thomas, Percy, Nia, Diesel, and Carly, are unsuitable in my opinion, because they still sound nothing like the previous voice cast. I don't see why we had to hire kids voicing more mature characters like Thomas and Diesel. I mean, in the original show, they're obviously grown adult engines but act immaturely sometimes. And like I said before, they're not supposed to be this young. Number 7. The new songs. They're not that interesting to begin with. They're about as bad as the songs in the Learning with Thomas videos. They're just forgettable and bland. What else can I say? As for the theme song itself, as bad as it is, at least it's only 15 seconds long, unlike the tiring engine roll call theme from the past. Besides, I've heard worse theme songs like the original Johnny Test one, which blatantly rips off Green Day's American Idiot. Number 8. Thomas is the star of every single fucking episode. That takes so much story potential away. At least with the Sharon Miller and Big World Big Adventures eras, they focus on other characters besides Thomas as the main protagonists of some episodes, such as Nia, Rebecca, Percy, James, Emily, and even some of the narrow gauge engines like Peter, Sam, and Duncan. Here, Thomas is the star of every single episode in this godforsaken reboot. I love the character Thomas, but I don't want him to be the main hero of every single episode because that wouldn't be fair. We should focus on Thomas's other friends too, as I said before. Otherwise, the show would be bland and unwatchable. Number 9. There's no consistency. For example, why in the 9th Circle of Hell is Gordon pulling Annie and Clarabelle? That's Thomas's job. Not to mention that Clarabelle, for some reason, isn't going backwards like Toad. Also, they don't seem to be coupled up properly. Why is that? Oh, and remember what Mattel said in an interview that they don't want to use the wheels as hands? Well, they lied. The engines literally use their wheels as hands to pick up stuff. Not to mention that Sandy has a robotic hand in her buffer beam. She's supposed to be a railroad speeder, not a robot. And furthermore, why does Gordon need a knuckle coupling at the rear of his tender? He's already got a hook and loop coupling, so why does he need both? And look how big some of these characters are compared to Thomas and his pen pals. Cranky I can understand, but Gordon, Emily, and Kenji? They make Thomas, Percy, Nia, Diesel, and Kana look like narrow gauge engines. And finally, number 10. This new show is not going to stand out on its own. My point is, it's going to be like hundreds and hundreds of other kids shows these days, including Paw Patrol, Teen Titans Go, and The Loud House. I have a feeling that once kids watch this for a while, chances are they might end up watching something else that's even more entertaining. If you want to see more information on this subject, then I suggest you watch the Unlucky Tug's video on the first trailer of All Engines Go. Overall, this reboot is 100% terrible. There's barely anything good about it. It is the absolute worst reboot I have ever seen in my entire life. Yes, even worse than the Powerpuff Girls 2016, because at least that show had good ideas going for it, but it's still terrible. Here, there's nothing redeemable about it. It should not have been greenlit in the first place, and that is why you can't defend Mattel anymore, guys. You just can't. Say what you will about Hit Entertainment, but at the very least they managed to redeem themselves starting with Blue Mountain Mystery, and since then, they made great new episodes and specials in the last decade. But for Mattel, they're not even trying anymore. And do you know what the worst part of it is? No matter how valid our arguments are with this new show, or no matter how long we say in full detail why it sucks, Mattel Television is never going to fix it all. They'll just be like, screw it, we don't care. I remember making a vow to myself to remain a loyal Thomas fan no matter how good or bad the changes are. But this new reboot of Thomas is where I draw the line. I can't watch this show anymore. Not in this current state. And I'm sure some of you idiots in the comment section are going to spam me saying, "Oh, but Trevor, it's a kid's show. Get over it." Look, I don't fucking care if it's for kids. I still think kids deserve better quality shows than this. Same for the merchandise itself. You can't defend Mattel's lack of quality in their merchandise just by saying that it's for kids and that kids are so stupid that they can buy anything. That does not make you a good parent or person. It just makes you look foolish. In addition, if you're going to do a reboot of Thomas, why not remake more classic Railway series stories into full CGI like you did with The Adventure Begins, as I said earlier? Oh, and sorry for the cursing in this video. I just need to let all my inner demons out. In fact, I haven't been this angry since my first rant video on Thomas Wood, which I've gotten a lot of praise and backlash for it at the time. Also, I'll try to understand and respect your opinion if you legitimately like this show, but at the same time, I don't see how anyone can enjoy this. If you want to see a better reboot, go watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic or DuckTales 2017, because they are far more watchable than this garbage. Heck, I could even say that the Garfield show of 2009 was better than this, even though it was technically hit or miss, but at least it stays true to its own source material, unlike here. Let me know your honest thoughts on this new Thomas show, because I like to know. If you totally agree with me, then that's perfect. If not, well, that's just hard cheese. And don't worry guys, I'll still watch the first 24 seasons of the show. I'm just not going to watch more of All Engines Go because it's that bad. It's basically Chuggington 2.0, but worse. Oh, and one last thing. Mattel, I hope you're watching this, because I'm really angry with you guys. In fact, I honestly expected better from you. I suggest you cancel this reboot and resume the CGI series regardless of the failure of Big World Big Adventures, because I want to see Thomas go to Japan as hinted back in season 24. You people should be ashamed of yourselves, because not only you ruined the original source material once again, but you gave Thomas the same exact fate as Disney's Star Wars in terms of destroying a franchise and angering an entire fanbase of dedicated people who loved the franchise to begin with. I hope you guys go bankrupt soon, because unlike good companies like Hasbro, you keep cutting costs and corners on everything, and it's not just with Thomas, but also Pixar's Cars, die-cast metals, and other properties. I also hope Hasbro buys you out someday, because they've been doing a much better job with their own properties than what you can ever even hope to do. And once again, I'm done defending your asses. Well, that's all I got to rant about. See you all again in the next video, but hopefully on more pleasant terms. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.